I'm Adam Higgins. I am a MarTech consultant here at HighRoad Solution. And today we're going to talk about really effective email, right? And so really, you're going to walk away here learning how to practice effective modern email marketing tactics or techniques. And I'll show you how to look at your current program, your current portfolio, and look at how you can effectively do marketing better, right? That's the whole goal for HighRoad Solution as well. Our mission is to make you guys better association marketers, right? And so we're a digital agency that's here to help the associations in really being effective marketers, and email being one of the components, or I should say channels, that a lot of associations use. And we got a lot of data to support that. And not only is it just email marketing, it's email automation as well as marketing automation. So a lot of the conversation will segue into email automation as well as marketing automation, and we'll compare traditional approaches versus modern techniques that some of our clients are using today. A lot of our clients have transitioned on to really sophisticated marketing automation programs, and doing some of the email marketing, but in a different way once they started to grasp the concept of marketing automation, right? And so what we're going to do is look at making sure that we're being effective with the way we're using that channel and maximizing the channel to its full potential, and not just using it as we've always traditionally used it. And myself, a little background, I used to work for an association. I worked for one for 7 years. I was the somewhat of the MarTech person in the marketing department, and email kind of fell under my umbrella, as well as the website and social media and the AMS. So me being on both the mark and the tech side, I was able to do a lot of things with integration and so forth, and automate some things way back then. And some of these techniques apply now today, but some of these techniques that I was doing 7 years ago have gone away. And there are some new modern approaches that we're working with a lot of our clients, and we're going to show those examples today. And so what I like to do typically is start off at a high level and kind of work our way down into some of the practical things that you can take away and start using, tomorrow if need be. And really, why I like to start from a high level is just so that we can understand the foundation first and really start to grasp the concepts that we're trying to preach. And then you can really understand the practical application after that. And so we have a survey that we put out to associations, marketers in those associations, and it's the state of digital marketing in associations. And one of the questions in there is what channels, tools that you're using inside of your marketing portfolio. And this is a screenshot that comes out of that survey that breaks down all of the different channels or tools that some of your peers at different associations are using to try to be effective marketers, right? And one of the things to note out of this, there's over 20 or so different types of ways we can touch a member or a prospect or a lead. But what we walk away from here is understanding that email newsletters is still a dominant force or a dominant channel or tool that we use to communicate with our members, right? It is, over the last 4 years, it's been at the top and probably will remain there for some time. 87%, as of our last survey, are still using email newsletter as a way to communicate with their members. And email marketing systems are still actually on the rise, and still one of the top tools that marketers are using to communicate with their members or prospect leads. What's surprising is still low is marketing automation. right? And that's right around 25% or so. And that's, it's increased at a slow pace, right? You can say 5% over the last 4 years, but increase in that. But from my perspective and what I'm seeing with our client base is a lot of people are asking about marketing automation and starting to think how they can transition. It is a little bit of a strategic shift in the way you do marketing, but I don't see any other way, right? It's interesting. There's so many of these different channels and tools that people are using to communicate with their members, but you really need a marketing automation solution to really track all of those different touch points, right? And so what we walk away from understanding from that survey is that email, again, is one of those dominant pieces, and we need to really maximize the effectiveness of email and figure out what is the best way we can use email in our organization. And there is a shift that's happening with modern marketers that we're moving away from a lot of the things that we traditionally did, those of just, taking a list of people and just sending an email to it, right? Those tactics have kind of gone away. And now there's very sophisticated ways of reaching your members and reaching leads. And a big part of that is marketing automation being introduced and changing our perspective in the way we approach marketing, whether from an outbound to an inbound somewhat methodology, right? And what we're going to do today is really kind of look at some of the traditional things that we've done in the past, right? And look at how they're done today in kind of this modern marketing world, right? And I really don't like reading bullet by bullet, but it makes sense to kind of step through each of these. And this is what we're going to spend a lot of our time talking about today. And I think it's helpful to really kind of dig into some of these areas, and you'll walk away with some things that you can start to apply tomorrow, right? First is really being organization-centric versus member-centric. You want to be member-centric. And member-centric is a take that HighRoad kind of put member-centric there versus user-centric. If you Google that or look it up, and it's really the focus is around the user or the member, and not necessarily on the brand or the organization that is doing the marketing. Your marketing shifts to focus on the needs of the member. And associations are already kind of set up in that way, right? We're set up in that way to really be there for the member. That's why they're started, and there's no association without a member. And I guess there's no company without customer, but an association is set up specifically to help with the needs of a member. And so you're looking at those needs and really tailoring your communications around those needs. And once you change that shift, you make that shift, some of the other things just start to fall into place, right? And so once you change from organization-centric to member-centric, the batch and blast kind of mentality goes away, right? Where you would just take a list and send out an email and hope for anything. I used to call it spray and pray. Right? Now there's more target segmentation, really trying to fine tune your audience for that specific communication. There's always been a heavy focus on deliverability, on the who gets the email, right? Did that person get that email in their inbox? And nowadays it's really a focus on engagement. And I'll talk about the differences between the two. And engagement actually helps out with deliverability. And once you change your focus from member to member-centric, engagement is key. And then engagement is there, and it helps out deliverability, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then we got value on conversions, right? Placing a high value on the things that tie to revenue. ROI, those types of things. And then production has always been a problem that I help out with a lot of our clients, right? It's one of those things where a lot of our clients get caught up in the production aspect of the email. And, you know, truthfully, a lot of the systems weren't set up in a way where it made it easy for you to create, you know, email templates. Well, nowadays there's tools in place inside of these platforms that make it simple for you to create a HTML email. You don't need to go to school to learn how to code an email template, right? And so prior to that, you really had to know your stuff with the way email is created in this whole black art of responsive design and compatibility with a lot of the different platforms that these emails go to. So having knowledge on all of that has kind of gone away, and just really building out your template, a really beautiful template. And then we want to focus those communications to be one-on-one and being more contextual. And then automation comes into play to help with offsetting some of the things you really can't just do manually. You have to use some type of automation to facilitate some of those things. So, so that's where our conversation is going to go today. There's going to be a lot of things that you can take away from these different areas. So let's dig in there. So let's talk about member-centric. And again, it's really changing the focus on the member, right? And the idea there is that you are capturing that member's touch points along the entire membership. So you see the life cycle of that member. And at different touch points, they're telling you exactly what they need. Right? So the way they interact with you is the way you communicate with them. And that allows you to have a lot more context. It allows you to, you know, strengthen your relationship with that member. And you're not just creating content for everybody, you're creating content specific to that member. And that member is dictating the way the communication is happening by the interactions with you. And really, as a marketer, the only thing that you can do is generate activity, okay? And you're generating a lot of activity with the hopes that it generates leads or generates some type of revenue. And the best way to kind of make that activity or people react to that activity that you're generating is to create contextual experiences. And so once you change your focus to a member-centric focus, you're thinking more about contextual emails and matching the content to the audience. And you are attracting the right audience with blogs and those types of things. And hopefully you're generating the right impulses, which lead to revenue, right? So really, what does it mean, right? What are we talking about here, right? And here is really a comparison between the two, right? So something that's organization-centric is something that is of the batch and blast mentality. And I was there. When I used to work at an association, I would quickly just grab a list of all contacts and take out some of the people that have opted out and just send out a campaign. And you're just hoping and praying that somebody would respond to it. But it's about you and what you think they want, right? And in a member-centric area, they're telling you what they want. And the campaigns are specific to that member at different points in their life cycle, whether they're this type of member versus this type of member, or they have this job title versus this job title, and they've done something maybe on your website, then you send out this type of communication, right? Versus just sending out a communication regardless. And the engagement that they're creating with you, the interaction that they're creating with you, creates those communications. And so what you'll have is the single view into a member. And the only way to really do this is marketing automation, right? To have a single view of all the different touch points, you know, social, from your website to email, different landing pages. Looking into that is all through marketing automation, and that makes that seamless across all the channels. You have one single voice. And so what you have is this modern technology stack now. Email is a component of that. You got newsletters, you got an email solution, maybe you're sending out some announcements about legislative things that are happening on the Hill. Maybe there's a new event, so you're sending out email communications about that. What needs to happen is that the members at the center, they don't necessarily know that there's all these different systems that are sending out these communications. Well, all they know is that they're receiving the communication at the right time and it's relevant to them, right? And that relevancy, that's why we put that little heart there. That's what they love. That's you showing them love. And being relevant generates leads into your AMS, leads into your e-commerce system, which generates revenue. So I love this graphic here. It really illustrates how a lot of different systems can be at play. Email being one of the components. In marketing automation and email have a joint effort to really make the member happy. And there's a lot of systems at play, CMS, your web, and so forth. But today we'll focus on email marketing with a little bit of marketing automation. But I like this graphic here. It really illustrates how a lot of systems can work together to show that member that love that you guys want to do. And then talking about, you know, the life of the lead and seeing it at a single viewpoint, this is it, right? So we have a solution here in HighRoad Marketing Cloud, and it allows you to see the different touch points a person has had with you, right? And when they became a member, then all of the different, they went to a website and they looked at this email. So it's a really cool way to look at all of those things. And then you score those touch points along the way. That allows you to have lead scores. So it allows you to see who's engaged and who isn't. And that is very helpful. We'll talk a little bit about engagement, like I said, and that's helpful when coming into deliverability and those types of things and conversions. You know, lead score is one of those things to help see who is your most engaged and who's not engaged, and what do you got to do with those two different audiences. So let's talk a little bit about some specifics, right? So let's get into it, right? Let's talk about target segmentation. Okay, so we started with the high level, really changing our focus. We're going to be member-centric. We got the members' needs in our minds, and we're talking about creating contextual experiences for those members. And the best way to do that is to not batch and blast, but to create these lists or audiences that are grouped together based upon the needs that you think they want, right? And so that's what you're doing. You're building these lists to really help target your messaging. And the old way of doing that is batch and blast. And again, I worked in an association, and I admit, I raised my hand to this. I've done this, and you know, it is easy and it's successful in some ways, right? You do get some type of feedback and some types of, you know, success out of doing the batch and blast. You send it out, and maybe a few people do open up the email and click on a link and then maybe register for the event or whatever the thing that you are promoting or wanting them to do. And it works, and it's worked for some years. But what we're seeing as a result of this is that there has become not a direct opt-out. Members are not saying, you know what, I don't want this communication. They still respect the fact that you're sending them emails and it's coming in, but they don't necessarily opt out. They just tune out. And tuning out is almost worse, because you don't know whether or not they're actually reading it or you're sending them relevant information. They're still on your list. They still are opted in, but they just tuned you out. And I think that's almost the worst opt-out at that point, because at least if somebody says, they're opting out. They're telling you you don't want to talk to them anymore. So that's it's a little easier to take than people just, not just reading your emails and just receiving them, right? And so that's what happens with a lot of the batch and blast, is we see with a lot of our clients. And so what target segmentation does is flip that, and you basically create these niche lists specific to the campaigns that you're creating. And here's a couple of steps that you can do to take away from, creating a target list, okay? So target segmentation, right? And it requires some level of research. You have to roll up your sleeves a little bit and get into your AMS or CRM system and really start to dig into some data to find the groups of people that you want to communicate to. Let's use this example. Maybe it's an event that we're promoting, right? And it's a similar event that you've held several times. And now you have some good data back in the AMS that lets you know these are the groups of people that have attended the events in the past. And more than likely, they'll be interested in this event, right? And so what we see today from a lot of our clients is they'll just take that list and then send the email to it. They've been to these events in the past. We're going to just send them this email. They'll like this event. That's one approach. But I think if you want to get that A+ when it comes to target segmentation, we can do a little bit more research with that, right? And so we search the contacts that have previously purchased, those events in the past, and let's find all the commonalities. How are all of these people alike? Is there certain demographics, from job function to age to gender, the company they work for? If it's a trade organization, is it, the company type, the revenue that company generates? What are the interests of these contacts or these members? Find the commonalities in it. It takes a little time to do that, right? Get the commonalities, and now you have a list that you can go out and search against, right? And find those same commonalities of the people that haven't attended any of these events, right? And so now you have that at play. And that gets into more target segmentation. So it requires a little bit more work. And then, so this is one, I wouldn't say simple, but it requires a little work, but simple on its surface, to go out and how to find certain target audiences, right? So it takes a little bit more work to do. But the benefits is really what we're doing is creating smaller lists, right? So a batch and blast mentality has one big list. I got 100,000 members, sending my message to them. Targeted segmentation, I'm sending it to 10,000 folks that I really think need this message, right? And that results into what? Better conversions. They say the smaller the list, the better it performs. And you're trying to match the right audience to the right message. And that is really what target segmentation is about. Another kind of modern technique is the engagement factor. The engagement factor is really looking at, has this person engaged with us in the past, okay? And you send out several emails, probably a month, maybe more than that, maybe a couple dozen. Has that person opened up any of those messages, right? You sent out the last 12 messages that you sent out. Have they opened that message? And if the answer is no, maybe you should remove them from the list. A lot of the systems are actually doing this automatically. So a lot of the marketing automation platforms are starting to implement this. And it comes to deliverability, and that's kind of the next subject that we'll talk about in a minute. And a lot of the ISPs are putting deliverability, engagement as a factor for deliverability. And you should be removing some of those contacts that just are not engaged. And there's ways to get them back into the mix and make them engaged. And those are some marketing automation strategies that you can put in place. But engagement is now becoming a key factor in your list creation. And it's no different than maybe being at a dinner party or something like that, and you attempted to talk to somebody 3 or 4 times and they just turned the shoulder on you a couple of times, and you know, they just don't want to talk to you. Right? So that's, you know, that's how the email systems are looking at it, and that's why you end up in some of those spam, the spam boxes or spam inboxes. So let's talk about engagement a little bit, and how do we analyze engagement, and how do we shift our focus? Now we're member centric. How do we shift our focus to really focus on engagement? And I might get a little hate mail on this one, because we're talking about deliverability, and I'm not saying deliverability isn't important, but I think a lot of the clients that I deal with spend a lot of time on deliverability, right? And a good example would be you send out an email to 1,000 people and 20 people don't get it. And there's a focus on why that 20 people didn't get the email. And rather than shifting the focus on whether or not people have engaged into that specific email. And here is let's just raise this question: is that an effective campaign, right? If you have 20 people that bounce out of 1,000, that's pretty good, actually, from a deliverability perspective. But sometimes we focus so much on the 20 people that didn't get it, and maybe it's an important person on that 20. And it usually is, and that's what raises the question, and we have to dig in. It becomes more of a technical conversation, and it's not really suited for the marketer. Myself, I would rather the marketer focus on engagement and figuring out whether from those 1,000 people, did 300 people go and register for the event? Something along those lines, right? Did they open up the email? Did they register the event? Did they like the content that was inside of that email? We shift our focus on engagement. What happens is deliverability becomes a whole lot better, right? Deliverability is still important. Deliverability is still important. There's a lot of configurations that go into deliverability. And again, that's a technical conversation, right? It requires some configuration. There's DKIM, there's SPF. There's, you know, the dedicated IP for people that have a high sending volume. There's all this configuration that goes into play to making sure emails land in an inbox. And sometimes we get so wrapped up in that and we forget about the other piece, which is the content, and which is creating interactive and engaging content for the people, and rather than just worrying about whether or not they received that content. And nowadays, it's only half the battle. Okay, so there is a focus on engagement with a lot of the email systems. Gmail uses this quite a bit. Yahoo is starting to do it. And what it is it's looking at whether or not that person, the member that you're sending communications to, has opened up previous emails. Okay, and this is how I look at it, right? From a deliverability perspective, it's like going to a nightclub. Right? And there's certain criteria for me to get into that nightclub. I gotta have a suit jacket on. I have to have dress shoes, slacks. I can't wear sneakers. I can't wear a t-shirt to get into this nightclub. There's a bouncer at the door, and there's a velvet rope. I can't get past that velvet rope without, you know, the criteria that nightclub has placed, right? But if I don't know the bouncer and I don't know the people that's inside and I don't have a relationship with them, I'm going back into that long line over there and standing with all the other people that don't have a relationship with the people that are behind the velvet rope, right? If I came up to the velvet rope and I had a prior, you know, relationship with that bouncer. We've had conversations in the past, and we've spoken about our families and so forth. And he gives me a handshake and lets me in through the velvet rope, right? So that engagement factor becomes very critical, right? And so we have to be better at the way we do email and making it more contextual to help with deliverability. So if you shift your focus on more so the engagement factor and being member-centric, I think deliverability improves, right? And so the idea that the email just landed in the inbox and worrying about that so much is going to go away very soon with a lot of the email systems here. And what's going to happen is that you're wrapped up in the configuration and not wrapped up in the engagement, and you're just still going to be sitting outside of the velvet rope waiting to get into the nightclub. Okay, so let's focus and let's shift our focus on engagement and being more effective with our content and being more contextual and making sure that we're target marketing to the people that need that message. So conversions, right? Conversions is a metric that I see a lot of clients really don't put a heavy focus on, right? And I think this is probably the most important metric out of everything. And conversions, to me, conversions are any action that you want the member to do when you send them that email, right? And when you send them that email, there's a call to action. That call to action can be purchase an event. It can be purchase a specific product, watch a video, read an article, or download a document. Those are all actions that that person needs to take. And a conversion is just seeing if they took that action. Was your copy interesting enough to persuade them to click on that link and send them over to do A, B, and C? And did they do it? And usually that requires some things in play so that you can get some information back on what happens after the click, right? You need some a tracking script or something along those lines on your website to understand within the email platform if that person took the action that you wanted. The conversion, I think, the most important piece is really looking at the revenue side of things, right? So not only is it just the action items or the call to actions that you want the contact or the member to do, it's really seeing whether or not those emails have made you money. And so once you look at it from that perspective, it allows you to focus in on some of the activity that generates revenue. And so we've seen this in the state of digital marketing, that people are starting to adapt conversions into their metric. Now, click-through rates, open rates are traditionally the things that people focus on and have been over the last few years. You know, page views with their website. But if your website gets 1,000 page views and but doesn't convert any leads or generate any revenue, is that a successful page on your website? And so conversions really indicate whether or not you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and puts you in a mindset of being more agile and being able to shift your focus, and also being able to tweak and make minor edits to the campaign that you've already running, right? And there's no harm in making a pivot, or if something's not successful, you know not to do it again, right? So conversions is that key performance indicator that lets you know how successful you are at doing your marketing efforts. So the idea really is getting out of the idea of these vanity metrics. A lot of people are locked into those. So page views, clicks, and opens. And really we need to just shift our focus and start to really focus on how much revenue a campaign has made. Look at your efforts that you're putting in. Some of these emails take some time to put some effort in, right? And so ROI allows you to see whether or not that campaign was successful and your effort in creating that campaign was successful. And conversions are a big part of that. In a couple of different platforms that we have, so in the Adestra platform, the email marketing platform, it allows you to see how much revenue an email has made. That's super valuable, right? You put a tracking script on your website, and it sends information back into Adestra and lets you know how much revenue that email has generated. So imagine you're sending out all these campaigns, email campaigns, about the annual meeting. And now you can look back and say, these sets of emails have generated $20,000 in revenue for the annual meeting, right? That goes a long way in letting you know where you should spend your efforts and what email messages in that larger campaign were effective, right? When it comes to marketing automation and you're looking at multiple touch points, you're not just focused on the email channel. You're looking at different channels. You're looking at it from a campaign perspective, and you're looking at how much revenue that's generated. And that's what marketing automation does versus email marketing. You're able to attribute revenue to all of your marketing efforts rather than just email, right? So that's the cool piece there. Marketing automation is omni-channel versus a single channel like email. So that's a clear distinction between the two. So a lot of people get it confused, email marketing or email automation versus marketing automation. And there's a distinction between the two. And one is looking at all the touch points and being able to say that, your campaign generated $15,000 is huge. And I think you can really see the value in generating that. And that all comes back with conversions and having some tracking scripts and putting in some effort from a configuration perspective and some effort in making sure you're tracking things correctly goes a long way in allowing you to really attribute revenue to your campaigns and to your emails. The other topic we wanted to talk about is the production. A lot of our clients spend a long time producing the email. And I think that comes out of direct mail. A lot of that building of a direct mail piece kind of transitioned into email, and you had several different steps with direct mail when you're creating a collateral piece. And you send it off to the graphic designer. There's a few different edits, and that came into email marketing. And the hard part with email marketing was the fact that the template would look different in different clients, and that's super frustrating. And I know it is. And with direct mail, you send out the mail, whether it went through UPS or went through FedEx or went through US mail, that piece of collateral looked the same to everybody, right? But when it came to HTML email, it looks different in different clients, and now you get into this black art of creating these really complex email templates. And nowadays, a lot of the systems are taking out that hard part. You're doing a little bit of that up front to create the template, but what the template is inside of the system it gives you some building blocks to create a beautiful template without knowing any HTML. And that goes a long way to cut down your production time. So instead of spending 4 hours on an email template, some of my clients have said days on an email template. You can cut that down to a couple of hours or an hour to build out your template. And for some people, a few minutes. That goes a long way to saving you time and being able to do the things that you want to do and do the things that you're designed to do, which is be creative and create awesome copy and contextual copy for your members. And so we spend so much time on the production element that we, lose sight of some of the other things, and we just don't have time to do them. And so the no-code template building is really where you want to be with a lot of your email platforms or marketing automation solutions. And a failed attempt at that is the WYSIWYG editor. What you see is what you get. And that editor basically was a way for a novice or somebody that didn't know HTML to modify a template. And what ended up happening, you still needed to understand HTML. It was always inconsistent in the way they operated and what they produced, and there was no way to really put your creative impact into that template. In order for you to put your creative impact into that template, you needed to know HTML. Whether you wanted to sort something or restructure something, it always required you to be knowledge in the HTML world of, or I would say the black art world of HTML email. And that was super frustrating for a lot of marketers. So now what we have is no-code editors. It doesn't require you to know HTML. And it separates that presentation from the content, and it gives you the things that you want so that you can really create some beautiful templates without being bogged down into the HTML. And some of these editors really allow you to see it real time, right? You have your content on one side and your template on the other, and you're just making edits to it, right? And the only thing that you got to worry about is what you do best is write awesome copy. Right? You go in there and create some awesome copy, and you're plugging it into the different sections. And that right there just saves a ton of time. You're not sitting there worrying about the font size in the WYSIWYG editor or in your Notepad++ or Dreamweaver. You're just focused on creating awesome copy inside of that template. Another thing is, being able to move things around and create different building blocks within your templates and structure things. You want this image over here, or having a 2-column versus 1-column, and having that ability, right? And creating those templates. And a lot of the WYSIWYG editor templates were very restrictive. And so you want an editor in this way so that you can build templates faster and build what you want and still create beautiful templates, keeping your brand consistent and not having to worry about HTML. There's no HTML required to do this. You're just learning the editor and learning how it operates, but not learning how HTML works and what is an H1 versus a table and all of that, right? So that allows you to start to get into target segmentation. Starts to let you be more contextual with your emails, because now you're taking that time that you were building out those elaborate emails in HTML or having a long drawn out production process with 2 or 3 different people. Now you can focus on making contextual emails and focus on what you guys do the best, which is be creative and create awesome experiences inside of email. In contextual emails is really the idea is that you're being very member-centric, because everything that you're sending to that member is specific to them. And a lot of this will come into play with automation, because some of it you just humanly possibly can't do. Like there's no way for you to do this manually inside of a system and be able to send off all of these emails. But there are some that you can kind of create, and we'll go through some automation sequences in a bit. But contextual email is really the most effective way to generate engagement and also generate those conversions. And really the difference is, and I think you guys understand this, right? So, a generalized communication is one newsletter for all, right? But there's ways to create a really contextual experience with each member with a newsletter, right? And using interest and those types of things to determine what they get inside of the newsletter, right? And the organization, centric way of thinking about newsletters sometimes is we're going to send this out on this day to these people, right? And so a lot of organizations have shifted to just really a blog format. The idea there is that you create a blog and members subscribe to the blog, or non-members, potential leads, and that when they subscribe, they say when they want to receive blog notifications. And the blog notifications then turn into what would be typically your flagship newsletter. And that newsletter then gets sent out when that person wants it. So if I say I want it instantly, once you post the blog, I get it instantly. If I say I want it weekly, it aggregates all the blog posts on the website and then sends me a newsletter of all the blog posts that happened in the last week. All right? Maybe I want it monthly, and same thing applies. And so that's another modern tactic that I see a lot of companies shifting to. What that does is just takes the whole idea of building out a newsletter out of somebody's hands and then puts it in the hands of the member to tell them when to get the communication. ICE, the intelligent contextual email, works pretty much the same way. It's just that it gets a little bit more specific because it looks at the interest in the content inside of the aggregated communications are tailored specific to that person's interests. And so the member there is dictating the cadence and also dictating what content they get. And so that becomes more one-on-one. Some other ideas too is that you're now leveraging your target segmentation, methodologies that you're working with and pairing that with some contextual content. And you're going, when you're making personalization, you're going beyond what people typically do and just say, hi, Adam, or hi, first name. You really want to start to dig in and look at some segmentation and then apply content to those segmentation pieces. So for example, you got maybe an email about a specific product and a person has purchased more than 2 products in the last 6 months. So that person is more apt to purchase something, and maybe that message is a little different than somebody that hasn't purchased anything at all. If a person has registered for an event, the annual conference, early for the last 3 years, looking at that data point, maybe you should send a different communication to that person than the person that historically registers at the last minute, right? And upcoming renewals can be something, right? That can be a component that's sitting inside of a newsletter, right? You got your newsletter, and now you got some dynamic content that's sitting inside of that newsletter that says, hey, by the way, we got a renewal coming up. Do you want to renew now? So there's ways to apply context to newsletters. There's ways to apply context to one-to-one type of emails. But having that top of mind helps put you into the area of being member-centric. And so here's some examples with different platforms that we have. This is HighRoad Marketing Cloud that allows you to really tailor different content pieces. So what it does is takes out that complicated if and then scenarios. So older systems, traditional systems, back in the day, the way to do this was with straight code, right? If, then, and marketers don't know that. Right? And it's hard to get the syntax right, and any small thing with the syntax that just throws everything off. And so this editor UI experiences make it easier for you to have, contextual pieces inside of a newsletter and switch between different audiences. ICE, this is really a component that allows you to deliver a contextual experience to a member, one newsletter that goes out to everyone, but it goes out to everyone, but everything inside of that newsletter is interest driven or generated off of the demographics of that person, right? So you can tailor the content based on whether the member is a board member or whether that member is part of your PAC committee. Then there's content that is generated based on their activity on the website. There's stories in there based on their explicit interests from the EPC, right? And so you're able to take all of those data points and create a contextual experience. It's still almost one-to-one because each newsletter is built singly for each person. So that's a one-to-one type of newsletter, something that goes out to all, but it's based on who they are and what they're doing. In triggered messages, it gets you into the realm more of automation. All right, so that leads us down the way of getting into more of an automation framework, because it's hard to do this without automation, right? And what you're doing here is triggering certain communications based on certain actions or inactions that a person has done, right? So something that they've done or haven't done, has or has not opened a form, right? Whether you send out a communication, or has not clicked a link, or they abandoned a form or abandoned a shopping cart. You trigger certain communications that are one-to-one based on those actions that user has taken or hasn't taken. And so a good example of this is maybe sending out your flagship newsletter to a member, and the member opens the newsletter and they click on the annual meeting story. And what you have set up is an automation sequence to fire off. If a person clicks on this specific link, to send a personalized message from the president to invite them to the annual meeting, right? And it's looking at whether or not that person has registered as well. So we're bringing in data from the integration and so forth. But you can see that's a simple automation email that you can set up. That's just based off of action inside of the email. Once you start to think of actions that are happening outside of email, that's when you get to that point, that's when you need marketing automation. And so automation really is the thing that offsets your staff, your budget, your human capital on doing things. It's the technology that's doing things. And the technology is really good at doing things over and over again without making mistakes. Humans will make mistakes on repetitive things, right? It just is. But technology is known to do those things over and over again. It only does what you tell it to do. And automation allows us to leverage a lot of the communications that you want to have with members and that you just really can't do on your own. And here's a few quick wins that we can walk away from today. There's some welcome series that you can put in place, newsletter follow-ups, engagement win-backs, and these are some simple campaigns, and we'll step through a couple of these and talk about how you can set these up. These are some things that you can apply tomorrow. It just takes a little bit of time and thought and effort to put it in place, but these can be a huge, huge impact on your marketing efforts. The first thing, the keys to email automation, first thing, it just requires some planning, okay? So you just gotta write down your workflow. You take it, write it down on paper, write it in a notepad, something, put it in Word, just write it down. And what you wanna do is gather all the assets, then create all the assets. And those assets are content, your emails, and all of the different rules that go into building out that workflow. And then you just build out the sequence, the systems, all of the email platforms that we have in our portfolio, but other ones that I've seen all have a mechanism where you can build out some automated or recurring messages that are based on certain conditions. And a simple one is a welcome series. right? And the welcome series is really looking at one factor, which is the join date of the member. And that welcome series allows you to be a concierge to the member once they join your organization, right? And you are looking at key dates down that first year, maybe, things that you want that member to do. And so why not have some emails set up from different people within the organization, or from maybe your membership director, to contact them at certain points if they haven't taken that action. Right? And what this becomes is a two-way communication between you and that member. And some ideas on that is, member benefits, to completing their member profile, to doing a preferences survey. So these are all different email types that you can put in play that help interact with that member at different stages, and be able to communicate when at different intervals of their membership, especially during the first year of membership. And you want to bring them along and make sure that they're happy members, so that they come back the next year and still become members for years. Newsletter follow-ups are, real simple things. And a lot of the systems now allow you to just do this with one check, right? A good newsletter, has maybe a 45% open rate, and that's really performing. That's doing really, really well. But that means 55% of those people haven't opened up the email. And so why not try to get some more people into that pot by just doing something like In Case You Missed It, right? And so maybe you send your newsletter out on Thursday. That following Monday, maybe you send a follow-up email and say, hey, maybe, in case you missed it, here was the newsletter from last Thursday. And that's a real quick way to kind of put something in play that's automated and allows you to follow up and get some more people engaged into your email. Engagement win back is really one of those pieces where you got some people that have implicitly opt out, right? They didn't say, I'm opting out of your communications. They said, we are kind of disengaged and are just tuning you out. And why not figure out how to best communicate with those people? And you can create a workflow or engagement series that sends them a series of emails, and then at the end of that, if they don't engage, then you create a exclusion list of those people so that they are no longer in your campaigns, right? And so a way to keep your good list hygiene, if you will. But another idea that you can put in play fairly easy with some thought and a little elbow grease, if you will. Okay, and so the key thing here, those were all email marketing tactics. And the key thing is understanding that email automation is not marketing automation. Okay, and marketing automation is omni-channel, and email automation is just a single channel where we're doing communications within email. So everything starts with email, then that's just email automation. Marketing automation is once you start to think about things that are happening in other channels, and that dictates certain communications at certain points in the life cycle, that's where you start to be in the realm of really needing a marketing automation solution, and looking at all the different touch points that you have and creating experiences in all of those different touch points, all of those different channels that have a single voice and is communicating based on the way that person wants to communicate with you. Okay, so we're right at the hour here, and so we'll cut it off there. There's a lot that we can talk about, when it comes to email marketing, but I'm hoping that you walk away with some practical things that you can take away from this. But the key thing is being member-centric and making sure that you keep members first and understanding what their needs are, and then starting to tailor your communications around that, and then getting into a realm where you can be more contextual with your emails and focusing on engagement. And that will make your emails a whole lot more effective than going the traditional routes, which is kind of the simple, batch and blast. Okay. All right. So thanks for joining today, and again, always hit up the HighRoad U on our website, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to hit us on Twitter or anywhere. Right? You can call us or email us. Okay. So take care. And